we are going to open it up to our audience. And so if you have any questions or comments, we have somebody in the back, and we'll go from there. I have so many more questions. We just never have enough time to cover all this stuff.
Hello. I just wanted to make like an overall comment. I feel like at the beginning when they were saying, is it like more protective of withholding certain historic aspects, or is it control? I feel like it's leaning more so towards control. And the funny part to me is it's so weird because, and that's the word, it's weird. It just is. This behavior is weird. The only people who are really from this country are the Native Americans. So everybody in this room is an immigrant. But yet, because of what happened and the people who, took over, everybody has the same right. It was this thing of entitlement and power. And it was wrong, it was horrible. People don't want to talk about the history because it's embarrassing, because they don't want to acknowledge it, or because they don't care, or because they want to continue business as usual. We are all human beings. And then the people also profess to be Christians, teaching the love of God, and they're not acting as such. That is hatred. And to hate a person and yet go to your church and pray and praise God, they need to take a look at themselves. We all are entitled to humanity and dignity and fairness. You can look and see America is a melting pot. We're a melting pot. So yes, slave masters raped the women. That's why you got light-skinned black folk. Then you got the white people who had their children nursed on a African breast. So people need to start telling the truth. It should be taught, yes. And there should be a conversation, yes. There should be acknowledgement. No, we didn't do it, but it's still happening because you can see the prejudice and the hatred today. We are all Americans.
Thank you.
Such a wonderful point. And so we were joking. One of my favorite stories is about Ford and the Ford Sociological School. That back then, when they were bringing folks over and hiring them, they had this whole program where on a certain day, the people would wear their ethnic clothes, and then they would go into this thing that was kind of like a melting pot, but they would walk behind it, and they would come out as Americans, and they would wave their flags. There's some great history at the Henry Ford Museum.
May I respond quick?
All right, it might take this a little bit off course, but I'm really interested, especially when it's the 250th birthday of the United States. There are what I will call bad faith historians about the origin of the country. And it becomes for ideological reasons. And then there are counter historians who will state a case that this is truer or factually accurate. Do you have any comments about that? And it's really having to do with separation of church and state. And it comes to Christian nationalism, and I just see a huge separation. And it's not exactly the topic, but I think there's all kinds of repercussions that deal with what we've been saying and what you spoke of very wisely. So thank you. Sorry to take us off in a different direction.
No,
That's okay.
I have a friend who's.
Okay.
I have a friend who's a college professor. He leans more conservatively to history, but he did his graduate school at one of the Ivy League schools, which was more of a liberal perspective. And he said to me, but he grew up in a very rural area of Pennsylvania, and he said, I learned in grade school that our country was all heroes and we were the greatest country on the earth. And I learned in grad school that we were all villains in the worst country on earth. So there was like this, like, whoa, I don't know what to do. And then he had to go do independent, and it's very complicated. So your question made me think of that.
Yeah, great point about historians and why they go into this profession. One example comes to mind immediately. And maybe some of you have read the book, People's History of the United States, Howard Zinn. The guy was a member of one of the most radical members of the American Communist Party, and he hated America, and he wrote the book to express his feelings in order to inspire young people to hate America and to destroy the kind of America that we have inherited and to completely transform it into something that he thought would be much, much better. So he comes with an ideological goal. He goes into history by his own admission. He goes into the field of history in order to change the world, not to tell the story as it happened, okay, not to report the facts, but to spin it in a way that will inspire people to act in the way that he thought was praiseworthy. So that's the reason why we don't want perhaps the government to educate us about history. I'm a product of a government school system. Okay, and the kind of history that I learned when I was in school, half of it was completely made up. The other half that actually happened was spinned in a way that served the interests of the Communist Party in my country. Nothing of what I learned in that system was really true.
Okay. Yeah, there are always going to be, I mean, historians aren't machines. There are always going to be historians that have agendas, like Alex is pointing out, rightfully so. When it comes to okay, so we've had a really complicated relationship with religion in the whole history, and which is why I'm like, I don't know what to say, because I do, but you guys don't want to be here for the next 4 hours. I mean, what I can tell you is that everybody's pulling from certain points that are facts, like whether or not certain founders were Christian or not, and whether they were basing their choices in that revolutionary moment on their faith. And some of them were. Some of them were not. Or some of them had other perspectives that they were bringing to the table. All of them were in an environment where Christianity was the norm. And so that is part of this revolutionary moment and story. But at the same time, they chose to say there was going to be a separation of church and state. And you have people who come back at you and say, oh, well, those words are not actually in the Constitution. But you know who said them? Thomas Jefferson. Because he was asked, what does the First Amendment actually mean? And he said, there is a wall of separation between church and state. So that's where that comes from. So people will kind of choose which parts they want when they're having these arguments. In terms of, is this a Christian nation? Not only the First Amendment, but you have the first treaty that we ever negotiated and signed. It was negotiated under George Washington and signed under John Adams, very devout Christian. And it says in the Treaty of Tripoli that the United States is by no means a Christian nation. Those words are there. There are a lot of people who don't like that, right? And so but I will tell you this part of what actually happened during the Civil War can be couched in religious terms, right? We've always had this argument. It's probably going to always be with us. It's part of that. And I don't have a way of like giving you a tidy answer of how we can really grapple with it.
But also Roger Williams, where the idea came, when he established it, he said it benefits the believers
Yeah.
not to have a state.
True. Yeah. So a huge part of why they didn't want to have a state religion, why they wanted that separation, was because they actually felt like it was better for believers to not have to have that imposed. It was about, they were very concerned with your own conscience, right? So a state religion, you didn't necessarily have to practice that religion, but you had to pay money for it. You had to support it with your dollars. And some places you were compelled to practice. So there's this whole I don't know what the word is. I'm losing my train of thought there.
A lot of wars in Europe.
There were a lot of wars. Yeah. Yeah. So there, I mean, it was believed that it was better for us. And we have gone in ebbs and flows as to whether we believe that faiths can flourish by having that separation, or that faith declines if we have the separation. So it goes back and forth. And so it has, you can map that up and down across in the Cold War, all of it. It's all Yeah.
And if I can quickly add on, I just think of, though, not to disregard any parts of your point at all, but the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God. And I just...
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
No, because that's where I was headed.
No, I was just
Let
going
her
to talk.
speak, because I was headed there as we talk about the Pledge of Allegiance.
It just makes me wonder, me personally, I'm Lutheran, and just about my personal beliefs, I believe that God put us all on this earth for a reason. He wouldn't have created anything that he didn't want. And when you hear one nation under God, part of me just wonders very rhetorically, like, what is that making people think of who don't necessarily believe in God? Because, like, how does that make anyone else feel when they hear this every single day in school? We all have to stand up, hand over our hearts, say the pledge to the flag. If someone doesn't believe in God, what is that saying to them? And again, like, more of a rhetorical question, just like something to think about. But it's just something that your point just was very interesting.
And just so you know, under God wasn't added to the pledge until 1953.
54.
You know what? Historians are actually bad at dates. I say this all the time. All right. So, and the whole point was to be a reaction to the godless communists. So the original pledge was written by a minister who did not put God into it. But the reason we pledge allegiance to the flag and then the country for which it stands is because it was actually written as a sales pitch to sell flags to schools for the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus. And so it is actually you're pledging allegiance to capitalism, which may be appropriate.
Never stepped foot in the United States of America.
True, yeah. I mean, he didn't quite make it, but we still, yeah. So yes, that is, see, it's complicated, but yes, when you're pledging allegiance, it was actually a sales pitch.
We're gonna move forward to the next. We're good, because we're gonna move forward to the next question. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to bring it more personal. Sure. So I'm a white woman who is a second generation from England. So my people on that side are responsible for the Crusades. Pretty hideous. And I'm sure my father's family in some places responsible for slavery. So my responsibility is to decide how I take care of that. I have a responsibility with everything I say, everything I do, all the relationships I have, how I teach my children, how I teach my family, how I interact, that I take responsibility for making a difference in my world, because that's where I have control. Who I educate, how I use my education. I have to be a force for change. I have to be a force for truth. I have to be a force that says, yes, our history is complicated, but it's also hideous, ugly, and it still hits us in the face all the time. African American people do not have the same rights that I do. Not in the grocery store, not anywhere, not being pulled over by the police department. I have to be aware of that, and I have to teach it, and I have to be cognizant of that, and I have to take responsibility for the privilege that I have and not take it for granted. And that's what I believe my part is. And that's also what I believe all of our parts are. Because if not willing with our own lives in our own sphere to make a difference, to make things better, even in this world where things are getting worse, then we are not Christian, and we are not following Jesus, and we have not taken responsibility for, yes, we are all immigrants for sure. And some of those immigrants are responsible for some pretty horrible things. But we have to do the best we can with our individual lives, in our individual spheres. And that's where I think it matters. It matters politically, it matters globally, but it also matters every day of my life, what I do with my voice, what I do with my resources and my finances and what I teach and what I give. So I think that in all of this is the place where we have to take responsibility to make a difference.
I absolutely love that. Especially because I just turned 18 a week ago, and thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to plug my birthday. Sorry, that was not the point of that. But I've been told for such a long time that it's my generation who's the future. It's my generation who's going to change it. And I actually was at a leadership conference this weekend, and I saw a speaker, and I want to quote him. Like, making a change is not about your age, your education, or your position. And specifically that, he was talking about in leadership, and I think with history, it comes a little bit different on the education side of it. But with your age, he was talking about rebel against it. No matter what age you are, there are social pressures against you. Why do we have to listen, and why can we not make a change on things that we are passionate about and things that there should be change on and things that should be talked about? Your position. So many, I think about the kids who are younger than me at the leadership conference thinking, oh, I can't do this until I'm 18. I'm 18. Oh, I can't do this until I'm 21. Oh, I can't do this until I'm the president of this company. Oh, I can't do this until I founded this business. Yes, you can. You still have the power to be able to raise your voice and make a change. And you hear so much about my one voice isn't going to change anything. Your voice could inspire someone else to say something and inspire that chain reaction that then leads to something huge. It's like that butterfly effect idea. And I think we really need to hone in on that because our voice can really, truly make that change.
I just have a question, I guess, for everybody. Do you feel that you know history? I'm finding as I get older, I'm reading about this event that happened, or this person that did this, or this woman that made this contribution that I've never heard of in my whole life. So I don't really feel like I know history, and I don't know if other people are finding that too, that the more you live, the more you're learning, and you're going, oh my gosh, I never knew that. Or is it just
I have a PhD in history, and I don't feel like I know. I'm always learning more. I'm always, yeah.
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, personal responsibility. You have to take the responsibility to learn, which it sounds like you are, which is beautiful. Some people don't want to know about history because the way they feel it will impact them personally, right? Or how it may paint a picture about them, right? And so I applaud you for wanting to. I love to learn. I didn't like history when I was in school because I thought it was very boring and I wanted to do other things. But now I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Let's go to the next. Okay, yep.
I have learned about some family history that I wish I didn't know, however.
All right, well, hey, first off, thank you, everybody. Thank you, audience. Thank you, panel. Thank you, guys, for listening. I want to tie in multiple different points that I've heard throughout the night. And what I really want to challenge you on or ask for your guys' opinion is, how can you take different aspects from history, whether it was Alexander the Great, like ancient history, whether it was the civil rights movement, or whether it was something you just heard yesterday on the news or something in your own life? How can you take on different perspectives rather than just one perspective from outsiders' opinions, take on different perspectives on your own opinions, and then formulate that into a position where you can take empowered action or non-action to rewrite your own personal history, to rewrite your own personal evolution, to empower yourself as a human being to choose to be, to create a better person for you, a better community for now and then generations to come? What are some actions you can take or some ways you can distill all that?
I love that question. I'm a big history buff and also with a history degree, but I will hear about something from someone and I'll realize I really don't know a lot about that, and then my wife, who's in the room, doesn't love, because then it means for like the next 2 months I'm like, well, actually during this event, this whole thing happened, similar to, sounds like your husband. So like a couple of years ago, like I had somebody talking about the JFK assassination. This person very much believed in a lot of conspiracies around it. I was like, I don't know. And that was kind of like the 9/11 for a generation above me, where they really remember where they were and it was such a big deal. And I just didn't know a lot about it. So I went and I kind of read, and this is what I do. I read like 3 books. Like one, here's just the facts. Here's one perspective. Here's another perspective, and then try to think about it. And then I talk about it for like the next year because that's what I've read on. And then I also did this kind of with the Christopher Columbus issue that I mentioned before, where my cousin was very activated about it. I realized I didn't know a lot about him, was reading it, and that gained a perspective as where to me it was like, he's really complicated. He was a devout Catholic. That was kind of how he sold his journey. He was shopping around to different European leaders to just get it funded. He was totally wrong about, as we know, about, getting to India and then, but I think some people I had heard they didn't know the earth was round then. Yes, they did. He knew it was. That was not controversial. But it was also that he took 4 voyages. The first voyage, he met natives that were a pacifist group in the Caribbean, and they were like welcoming and trading, and he wrote all this stuff in his diary. He loved them. He's like, they're the greatest people. They're converting like crazy. They're giving us their things, but however, there's no gold. So we got to do another voyage. The second time, he found basically one of the worst tribes in the Caribbean, as in they were just an enslaving tribe. They had actually killed many of the members of this other one. So he had this very impression of the people there that was like, we need to enslave these people and also kind of make them work these gold mines. But he was a very complicated figure, but it also brought me to learning about Bartolomé de las Casas, who was found the protector of the Indians. He was a very heavy Columbus critic at the time, a contemporary. He was on the ships with Columbus, and he was converted to Catholicism later, became a priest, and he spent the rest of his life defending the rights of the natives in the country. So it just led me a perspective of like, I never learned about him in school. So I don't know, I just encourage you, read up on it, and then you'll learn those new perspectives, and it'll influence how you talk at parties the rest of your life.
Yeah. And
I'm so sorry, what's a pacifist? Just for me, what's a pacifist?
They were very nonviolent, didn't believe in war.
yeah. So if you want to, first, stay curious. That's step number 1. But then you do need to vet the sources you're going to look at. All right. And so if I'm doing historical research, I'm looking at primary sources. That means I'm looking at sources that are from that past whatever that I'm studying. So I read a lot of documents. I'm looking at a lot of photos. I'm diaries, a lot of different perspectives, newspapers, things like that. The average person doesn't have time to be like, well, I'm really interested in this, so I'm going to learn another language so I can read that guy's diary. And no, but somebody else has already done that for you. Yay. So you can, but you have to look for credible sources. And one way to do that is to look for books that have been written by scholars. You'll find that usually a university press has published them. Do they have, or at least do they cite their sources? Okay. And you can, and get curious about those. What sources are they citing? Read, like he said, read multiple perspectives, read multiple books, but also compare those sources. What did they look at? How did they come to that conclusion? And that will encourage how you think about and how you start investigating what else you're curious about, and bring those things together. And I think once you learn keeping that open mind, you'll find your path for how that's then useful for you.
Well, because doesn't it matter of like what the objective is? Like, what are you trying to get out of this, right? And how are you trying to grow as a person? Because there's certain books that I will read specifically for, is it maybe self-empowerment or to learn about this part of history that will help me kind of engage with a certain type of demographic. So it depends also on what you're trying to get from that, what you're trying to glean from. Like, what are you trying to learn in doing that? I love to read all different type of things, but sometimes I go strictly for a strategy, right? What am I trying to learn in this particular moment in time and from this person? So also kind of doing an inward check of what am I trying to get from this? Let's go to the next one. Did you all have anything to say on this end? No, you guys are so quiet. Oh, I'm sorry. Alex, you gotta just put the microphone up. Okay.